All right, well, welcome. You can see kind of the top of your head. I don't know if you want to adjust your camera a little bit. There
Yeah.
you go. There we go. There's a good looking man. All right, and good to see you. Happy Tuesday morning.
How are you, Shawnee?
I'm good. I'm still hanging in there, trying to fight the good fight. So anyway, it's another day.
Hey, I can't tell you how many people have said to me for the last couple of years, you got to get together with Shawn. You guys are like birds of a feather. I said, yeah. I said, I'm about 20 years older, but a lot of the stuff you say and do I get a kick out of it because it reminds me of me, It's like,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think the truth never gets old. It doesn't go out of fashion at some point. I mean, there's those types of things. But let me just for formality's sake, can you give us, Ben? Where are you at? Well, first of all, I can't remember where you're at. I know
Well, I live in Scottsdale, and in the summer I live over in Coronado, across from San Diego. So I'm in Scottsdale now for another 5 or 10 days. Then I'm over in Coronado to get out of the heat here.
Gotcha.
That's my plan. Originally from New York.
And just remind and just kind of share your background with the folks that may not know, but may not be familiar with you.
Okay. Basically, I was an athlete, pretty decent level, and I hate to be, the older I get, the better I was kind of guy. But I was a pretty fair athlete, record holder and all that stuff, and always interested in training and conditioning. One of my uncles, Felix Bocchicchio, was the trainer and manager of Jersey Joe Walcott, which most of you people don't even know who. He was the heavyweight champion of the world. And my other uncle, Tony, was a physical culturist in the 30s and 40s. He was a vitamin taker, weight trainer guy. They'd call him health nuts back then. And he worked out with a guy named Angelo Siciliano, who was Charles Atlas. And so I had this background. Used to go see the fights, and I went to the gyms with the guys with the broken noses and the cauliflower ears. And I was fascinated Shawnee, I went to gyms where there really were kettlebells in the old days. Before kettlebells came back. And so I was fascinated with that stuff. And I always liked the training part of the sports I played. And I read everything I could about it, muscle magazines and strength and health. And I went to school to get, my brother graduated from Cornell University. I made Cornell as a math major, but I went to Ithaca College to study phys ed and health. And so that was my deal. I got a master's in kinesiology, PhD in exercise phys, and a second PhD in health. And then I went and studied at Columbia with body composition and weight management. So I was always fascinated with this stuff. And basically I opened the Nautilus facility. I don't know if you know the history of that stuff, but in the 70s, Nautilus was the big revolution. And I was one of the guys as a grad student that went down and visited with Arthur Jones and got involved with that whole deal. And I opened a little Nautilus Center in a factory building when I was like 24, just had completed my master's, started some PhD work. And I developed this, I think it's worth 60 seconds to describe how this happened. Nautilus machines were supposed to be this revolutionary, perfect resistance because it was variable. And so the resistance curve of the machine matched perfectly the strength curve of the human body. So I wondered, I said, wow, that's amazing. How'd you do that? I asked Arthur, and he said he went to a geriatric home and he isometrically plotted pure anatomical strength curves for people that had no training history or anything like that, just anatomically how this happened. So when I got these machines, I had to borrow money. I opened a little facility in a factory building. I borrowed money from my parents and brother, had a couple of bucks on my own, opened this place. I wanted to take advantage of those cams because I was in debt for the first time in my life. I wanted to make sure I used them well. So I've sensed that since the cams were made based on isometric plotting, that the closer you went to zero, which is slow, the more you would take advantage of the cams. So I started training everybody really slow, and my results were off the charts, right? So Arthur Jones and all these guys started to come around for me to teach them this system. And then I studied it, and I personally, this was, to me, I was training elite athletes at the time, was the hardest damn work I could possibly imagine. It was brutal, okay? But I figured that's good, intensity is good. So anyway, I started to develop this system of slow training, and it became a worldwide thing, And by the way, we've done studies, and the history of it clinically with hundreds of thousands of people having done it is pretty successful and pretty safe. So anyway, so I'm the father of slow resistance training. And like I said, I have a little bit of a background. So I had that kind of clinical horse sense knowledge of seeing this stuff work. And then I studied it and did my work, to understand why this worked and why I could maybe defend it or propose it as being, logical and also productive, rationally.
Yeah, I'm just hearing the names. I'm familiar with most of the folks you had brought up, certainly Arthur Jones, legendary in the field of strength training and all this. When I first started lifting, some 40 some years ago, I'm sure you got another 20 years on me on that.
Yes,
but
yes, I do.
I've been doing it for a pretty long time, 40 plus years in a while. When I first started, we had the Nautilus machines. I remember using them. They were blue, and I remember they had, the pullover one, which I really liked, but you don't see them anymore. They're I don't know what happened to them. If
Well, they do have,
something else.
What happened? So in fact, I have a studio here, a private studio in Scottsdale, and I have vintage late 70, early 80 Nautilus machines, and I have some other stuff too. But those things were so phenomenal and so productive and safe. Safe has to do with how you apply them and stuff. Nautilus is still pretty prominent, except they don't look like the old blue ones with the big aluminum cams and all that stuff. They actually, in the perfect workout is a whole new chain of places that do my system. In fact, I just got a hold of them. I'm going to work with them a little bit. They use Nautilus machines. The modern, the new Nautilus machines. But what happened was Arthur sold Nautilus, then he started MedX, and we did a lot of testing. I was involved with the back testing and the testing of the MedX machines. And the MedX machines were actually, Arthur told me, he made them so people could go slow. So they were frictionless, okay? And they were also had increments of like 2 pounds, because at slow resistance, you don't need much of a bump when you get to kind of a maximum ideal load. So anyway, they're still around. And all the stuff you see in the gyms, the Cybex, the Life Fitness, they were all knockoffs of Nautilus with supposedly varying resistance. So that's the kind of the origin. A lot of people don't remember that part of the history, but individualized machines for selected muscle groups were basically the brainchild of Arthur Jones and Nautilus.
Yeah, and you said prior to that, obviously kettlebells and the barbell's been around for 100 years or something like that. I can't remember when York was doing some of that stuff years ago. But people have gotten results in all different ways.
Sure.
Obviously with as many years of experience, what sort of rings true for you? What kind of consistency things have you seen that have been effective regardless of the different sort of details?
I think there are certain ways you assess whether an exercise program is good. Okay, let's just put it real simply. One is it's safe. Okay, if you get hurt, you and I know you can't train, it's useless. Okay. One is it effective? Does it work? Does it produce those results which you're after? Okay. Do you get stronger? Do you increase the potential functionally to do whatever it is that you may want to do? If you hear a leaf blower, my guy's outside. Anyway, is it universally applicable? Can everybody do this thing? Okay. Does it follow some tenets of applied anatomy and physiology? Does it have some real basis? Okay. These are the ways and does it have long-term adherence? Because you and I know, Shawn, you don't do this stuff, to get in shape in 6 weeks. This is a lifestyle behavior. And people ask me, Doc, how long should I train? How old can I be when I can stop? I say, I would like you to exercise until 2 days after you're dead, just to make sure you're dead. Okay. So that's my read on that.
Yeah, I like that. Very good. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I love that 2 days after dead to make sure you're dead. That's great. So let's, obviously, you're interested in training and nutrition and probably in other lifestyle things. What other things are you think that we're missing out on?
Well, I think, Shawn, the last 15, 18 years, I've been, dealing with metabolic syndrome, metabolic health. And I kind of stepped in it. I'm lucky because what my passion is exercise. But my whole business, if I really try to analyze it, has always been about body composition. If you really get down to the nitty gritty, I always thought that if you can improve body composition, that the rest of your metabolic support systems, your cardiovascular system, your respiratory system, your hormone system would kind of follow along. So in a gross way, I think this whole business is about body composition, being as lean as you can. Okay, we've got functional, but metabolically. See, Shawnee, I'm all about pathways and signals. Since we know metabolic syndrome, metabolic dysfunction is a behavioral condition. You don't catch diabetes, you don't catch obesity. It's behavioral. So it's logical to me that the treatment should be behavioral in nature. What are the two biggest levers we have? Diet and exercise, in my opinion, and I think in my study. Okay, so what's the best diet? What's the best exercise? Okay, and so then we start to look at, again, in my opinion, what are the pathways? What are the signals that these behaviors that we incorporate instigate? Okay, any kind of medication that you do, any kind of behavioral intervention, all have as an end product some kind of a metabolic signaling pathway, some kind of a response mechanism. Okay, so what signals can we produce safely, consistently, and most productively? That's how I look at health. Okay, so what's the best exercise? What's the best diet? Okay, the best diet, number one, obviously is the one that you'll probably conform to. I mean, I think you got to be on a plan as opposed to just being a random, just subject to media influence and things like that. I mean, you have to have some basis for this stuff. So what good stuff happens when you eat this way? And so we as providers of this information should be, I think, committed to presenting information that has a good scientific basis. And then number two, clinically, it works with most people most of the time, right? I mean, that's simple logic. So it seems, since this metabolic dysfunction has to do with, foods that are kind of non-productive or counterproductive to our health, the foods that are hard to store, make it hard to store energy, because in my opinion, insulin resistance is really a storage problem of energy. Okay, we become kind of toxic. The adipocytes, the fat cells become so large they can't function and signal properly. Okay, so that's an energy problem. So what's the best way to go about it? For most people, socially and I think physiologically, carbohydrates are a problem. We just don't handle them well, okay, for a number of behavioral reasons and then also biochemical reasons. So I think, I have some questions for you. I mean, we know that low carb stuff, you had something on Twitter about a study that showed the efficacy of exchanging carbs for fats, isocaloric diet, something like that. Okay, so what's better? Well, it's better is what gets most people better results when they're trying to drive the needle from illness or from at least absence of disease towards health. So I have this little slide, Sean, that I present, and it's a fuel gauge. On the left side, I have illness. In the middle, okay, half empty, half full, I have absence of disease. On the other side, I have health. I think most people want to get towards that health thing, not just absence of disease where the doctor says, well, your labs are good, you could lose a few pounds, your blood pressure is a little high, but you're okay. Okay, I don't think people really want that. I think people want to go towards the health part of this thing. Vigor, health, performance, longevity, feeling good, having some vitality. So that's my bailiwick. And I think MDs, let's face it, you got to face some situations where these people are hurting. They're close to dying. Okay, so you got to get them from illness to the absence of disease. That's good. I understand it. And I treat plenty of people like that. Excuse me. But I'm most concerned about so many people that could go from absence of disease or, slightly compromised to a healthy condition. To me, that population is huge, and we can make the biggest bang in our time and effort working on that objective.
Yeah, I think that some of it's just some common sense type stuff. It's like what actually works and what doesn't. This is a thing. The difference between I think a PhD and an MD or a clinician, or somebody who works with people. I mean, when you actually work with people and see what actually works in the real world, I mean, all of that stuff is almost, it's almost irrelevant at that point, because you got to live in the real world. And, when you give somebody you know, an outline that they can't follow, or it's too complicated for them to follow, or they don't follow for whatever reason, it's not going to work. So you have to find the things that work. And this is the thing, the great thing about athletes and bodybuilders and weightlifters, they figured out what works. They've actually done the field testing. And, you know, you got guys that are strong and lean, and you go, what do they do? Well,
exactly.
You just sort of emulate that. And when I look at, you know, I mean, dietary wise, I mean, the people that have the most muscle eat a lot of protein. I mean, that's just
exactly
right. I mean, it's like you can't get around that. And you know, the question is, you know, there's debate about where's the protein coming from and what's the best source and how much. But I mean, clearly, you're not going to be. And I agree with you. I think, you know, it always makes me want to chuckle when somebody says, well, just because you're lean and muscular and can do things athletically doesn't mean you're healthy. And I'm like, well, give me a better test that can show me.
There's a damn good indication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if we don't have lab tests to look at, how would you determine someone's health? You know, and I think you can. I mean, you look at any animal. Anybody who's seen a sick animal knows that animal is sick. You don't need to run a battery test to labs to say this animal is skinny and weak and decrepit and it's got mange. And we have humans that look like that, unfortunately.
No, well, you're right. I mean, I think it's hardwired into our DNA. Why are people like, take the Olympics, Sean, right? You look at all these people say, wow, these guys have great bodies. I get so many women say, oh, I'd love to have a body like that. I would love to have a body like that. I say two things, okay? Let's be realistic. Number one, change your parents. Number two, are you willing to do what those people do to get to that level? Okay? So let's be realistic. You want to get to that, to me, that's delusional, but it's at least an ideal. And I think let's face it, you know, Madison Avenue, what do they show? People that, you know, skin and bones or sitting bent over. I mean, you know, that's not the human drive. I don't even think that's a biological drive of the species, you know. They want to be healthy and vigorous. And now with this, you know, this metabolic catastrophe, I mean, we do have to address the two levers of diet and exercise, okay? The reason I got into this, Sean, Gary Taub's a good friend of mine. We've done stuff together since before he was Gary Taubes, you know what I mean, 20 years ago. And so, I mean, and a smart guy, I like him a lot. Okay, by the way, he's pretty much a monster, okay? I trained him a few times. The dude is strong, okay? Anyway, I went to this low carb conference in San Diego. I think I saw you there for a minute or two a few years ago. Anyway, and I listened to these people. I liked them, smart people, good people, you know, don't get me wrong. I said, there wasn't one friggin' word about exercise. And I actually talk about chuckling and talk about being condescending. I said, these people are stupid. I mean, how the hell can they not mention trying to change metabolic health and status, not mention one word about exercise? I said, you know, and I talked to Eric Westman and Finney and Volek are a little bit into, you know, okay, but all the guys, and I know a lot of those guys for a long time. And I said, so I went to Doug Reynolds, who, by the way, says he wants you to get to talk at this next conference or something. I just talked to Doug yesterday. Oh, that's another thing, by the way, Sean, anybody that wants to go to the low carb conference in August can use MeatRx and get a 20% discount. So I worked that out with Dougie. So if anybody wants to go, real good conference, low carb, I think the third week or last week of August, some real good speakers. MeatRx, will put it in your application, you get a 20% discount. Anyway.
Just before you go, where is that one located, by the way?
San Diego. Yeah. That's the big conference. That's where it all started. So anyway, I went there. I didn't see any exercise. I talked to Doug. I said, Doug, I don't need to do stuff. I'm doing really well. I'm a kind of a little bit of a lone wolf. I don't like organizations that much because the more people get involved, the less I like them. You know, that's just my nature. I'm leery of people. Okay. Anyway, so he said, so I did a presentation in the next meeting, and we did some breakout sessions where I had people doing the slow resistance training, right? My room was full. I sold 150 books, Sean, in 2.5 hours. My wife was there, like taking $10 bills or whatever. I mean, and so now we've become a part of this whole thing. And I think it's a good cause. And I think it's a good way to get the people and to change opinions. Okay. And again, I'm 20 years older. I'm going to give you a piece of advice. When you hear these people, you know, downplay you or denigrate you, don't get upset. Just, they're piss ants, okay? just forget. I mean, don't let it get to you. It's not worth your energy. Okay, really. There's some silly shit, pardon me, French, that goes on that's not worth. Listen, the older I get, the more I realize I'm not wasting my time with this. There's too much good. I'd rather go out and just look at the goddamn sunset than think about this bullshit. Okay, so a little bit. I'm telling you, as a friend, don't get so crazy with this stuff. Let them say whatever the hell they want, because they, you know, it's like some guy coming in the gym is 112 pounds and says, I'm going to have a bench press contest. I say, yeah, okay, good. No, just keep doing your workout and the hell with them. You know, I mean, just forget it.
Yeah, and I see. And so I sometimes I do it because it's humorous. I think it makes me laugh.
I get that part. Yeah, I get a kick out of your stuff. I actually watch your Twitter stuff because I start laughing. I said, this reminds me of my college days. You know.
I guess as maybe as a 50 soon to be 55-year-old, I have to get out of the college mindset.
No, some of it's good, Sean. Stay with it. But some of it just it ain't worth your energy, man. Yeah. Trust me.
Appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate that. So just more to that, because as someone and I really look up to people that, people ask me who my role models are, and I'm like, people that do it consistently. I mean, I saw a guy. I mean, I watched a video. You may have seen it. It came out 3-4 months ago. There's a 90-year-old guy. He's out there deadlifting 405 for reps at 90 years of age, and he weighs like 150 pounds. I'm like, that to me is crazy. That's fun. That's living when you're older. I mean, that's
I agree.
Do that, but I would argue that. Well, I mean, just to your point about exercise, obviously I work on diet and I try to encourage people. And if anybody goes to this meeting, know I'm always on people. Hey, let's start lifting. Let's start getting stronger. Step one, fix the metabolic, the inflammation, get your diet under control. When you start feeling better, put your body to work, put some muscle on your frame. There's this misconception that people that lift weights, bodybuilders, die prematurely because they lift weights. I mean, there's been some notable bodybuilders that have died early, but most of them have been involved in drugs and all kinds of other stuff.
Yes.
What is the real? I mean, because I think there's, you probably know some of these guys have been lifting for 50, 60 years. Many of them are still around and still training. I mean, you look at guys like, Dave Draper and Lee Labrada, and these guys, they're still incredible. And they're in their 60s and almost 70s. Well,
don't forget, Shawnee, I mean, if you're going to go that way, and I knew a lot of these guys, and I trained with a bunch of the guys that you would know historically, okay? And so, but I was never a bodybuilder, but I just was an Italian guy with a good physique. Everybody thought I was a bodybuilder. I was a jock. I was a sprinter, a field guy, and a football player. I mean, basically. But I love to do the strength training. In fact, I'm so old, Sean, when I was playing college football, because I was a defensive back and a punt return guy at 210 pounds, in those days, I was the biggest defensive back in college, I think, as far as weight. And they didn't want us to touch a weight. It was going to slow you down. Here I am running legit 4.5 40s, okay, faster than anybody. And I used to have to train in my apartment so the coach wouldn't see me training with weights. That's how old, school that was. But anyway, and I think I forgot what the question was that you just asked me. But when I see these people as old, I've got 80-year-old guys, Sean, that would work out, that would kick most people 40-year-old in good shape, kick their ass, okay? I got a 92-year-old guy who plays golf 5 days a week, all right? Has the greatest sense of humor, loves life, can do 30 regular push-ups. He's 90 friggin' 2, okay? So I see this. Now, a little bit's genetic. I got to grant them that. Okay, I got that. But these guys have never stopped. They've had a routine. That guy, we play golf. On the 9th hole, he has a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, okay, every 9th hole. On the 14th hole, he eats an apple, okay? When he goes home, he has a handful of nuts and a glass of wine. The guy, I mean, he does this routine. He's healthy. I mean, so to me, these habits are so rewarding that, once you understand, and I know how good it feels to be in good shape and to be healthy. You don't know that until you get there, or when you lose it, okay? The relative assessment of where you're at, right? Okay, so I'm not trying to tell everybody, you got to do this. That's why my program, honestly, Shawnee, I train 14 minutes twice a week for the last 50 years. Now, am I active? Yeah. I play some sports. Okay, I've got 160,000 miles on my Schwinn Airdyne bike. I love doing this stuff. But my formal exercise, my stuff that's organized and mandatory, is twice a week for 15 minutes. Now, it's high intensity, okay, which scares some people, but I got a lady in a wheelchair. I've had people that came into me so messed up, so obese, whatever. Oh, can you do high intensity? Shawnee, if I take a 400-pound guy who hasn't gotten off his ass in 10 years, and I sit him up against the wall and have him come down 10 or 12 inches to do a partial wall seat, I can get him to high intensity. Now, this is something, I don't think it's too deep in the weeds, okay? High intensity interval training, HIIT, right? Big thing. A lot of studies show it's way more effective than steady state exercise. Okay, all right, here's my read on that. If you're doing really high intensity exercise, it has to be by nature in interval. You can't do high intensity exercise for a long period of time. Mutually exclusive elements, right? Okay, so we know that. So you go on an elliptical machine and you do 60 seconds, hard, then you rest for 30, whatever the hell it is, okay? You do these intervals. Now, I think that's fine. It's shown to be productive workout, okay? But my high intensity interval is this. My first interval is with my quads, 60 to 90 seconds. My second interval is with my hamstring, 60 to 90 seconds. My third is with my lats, delts, pecs, okay? So not only am I working the whole body locally, I'm getting the benefits because exercise has local and global benefits. I want to get both, but I'm working each interval with a fresh set of muscles fully capable of working hard. If you do 10 intervals, Sean, and you're on your 7th interval, you can work hard. It can be difficult, but it ain't high intensity. High intensity has everything to do with stimulating type 2B glycolytic muscle fibers to a threshold level. That's it. It doesn't mean it's painful. It doesn't mean it's exhaustive. It doesn't mean it's hard. It can be all of those things, but they don't define high intensity exercise and the benefits that ensue. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I guess the question I would have here is, I mean, when I think about like sprint interval training, high intensity, I mean, I might jump on an Airdyne bike and go, balls to the wall for 10 seconds and I might rest 60 seconds and repeat. But I mean, when you're training your lats, I mean, obviously I'm assuming a lat pull down machine or a bent or a row machine or something like that.
Yeah.
You're doing it more with weights, but how do you trigger that stimulation of intensity without the fatigue, without the exhaustion that comes
No. Muscle exhaustion, okay? The reason you fail on a set, Sean, is because you've got muscles know two things. They know resistance, they know tension, and they know time, okay? Physiology tells us that you can work at a high intensity, now taxing these 2B fibers, these glycolytic fibers. We know glycogen is a real high flame, short endurance fuel, right? Okay, if you're working hard, Shawnee, you're going to fail within 90 seconds. I don't give a damn what you're doing, okay? I mean, if you're working as hard as you can. Now, can you prolong it? Yes, you can go a little lighter or you can slow down or something, but now you're starting to recruit lesser fibers, okay? Prolonging it. Now, there's a reason if I'm training for an event where I have to do this kind of an activity, I need to fuel that system with my type 2AB fibers, with my glycolytic / oxidative fibers. Okay, that's conditioning, that's training. But for high intensity, to get us the most bang for our buck, we want to work the type 2B fibers. Okay, law of orderly recruitment. When a lower strata of muscle fibers can no longer handle the load, it has to recruit upwardly, and it has to recruit to the next level. So then the next level, and then the next level. When we are working our type 2B fibers, let's say the hardest muscle fibers, the most powerful muscle fibers, they have the least endurance, okay? But all those other fibers have to be firing. They can't kick out. So you're getting the benefits. I did a study, Sean, where I showed that we can increase VO2 max and strength at the same time from one protocol, okay? So we know now, for example, we know that VO2 max for the audience, how much oxygen can you actually extract, okay? So that's really, it's supposed to be the gold standard of aerobic conditioning. Actually, it's a muscle test. How much oxygen can that muscle extend? Because, if we work one leg exclusively for 6 weeks and not the other, my VO2 max in one leg is way higher than my other leg, okay? So it's really a test of, I used to teach this to my cardiologist when we're doing stress tests. I said, If I strengthen their glutes and their quads and their hams, a little bit of calves, and just have them walk on a treadmill to figure out what's going on, watch the VO2 max go crazy. I've done no conventional aerobic training, all what they consider strength training. But understand the power of the muscle system. You would know this as well as anybody. You know the physiology. What drives the cardiovascular response? What drives the respiratory response? What drives the hormonal adaptation? Stimulation of the muscle system. It's the system that generates all of this stuff. Okay. Without that, why would it be capable of exchanging oxygen at 10 times resting if it weren't for the muscular impetus, right? Why would it be able to deliver blood, at so much more of a higher volume rate? Okay. Because the muscle system is demanding it. So hardwired into our genetic DNA. And as far as I'm concerned, DNA is just the development of signaling proteins that were vital to the human species. All right. So understand that this is a powerful tool, and that it doesn't take much exercise to get maximum benefit. Pareto principle: 80% of what you do, 20% of what you do gets 80% of the benefit. So I've done studies, IRB studies, reviewed studies, where we blew away conventional steady state exercise in any form of test that you want to provide: strength, flexibility, endurance, muscle endurance, blood work, all those things. So it is the most, and everybody can work harder than they used to. That's all high intensity really requires, that you do something that you're not used to. Steady state to me implies that your body can handle it most readily and doesn't have to adapt. That's why it's steady state. Human beings, 85 to 90% of human beings walk most efficiently between 3.2 and 3.6 miles an hour. Okay, what does that mean to me? It means that's how we walked as a herd or a tribe or a community. That's hardwired into our DNA. You could be 6'9" or 5'1", and we still have that kind of range of optimal efficiency walking. It's also the speed at which you have the highest rate of cognitive perception. So it tells me that your brain at a slower rate could handle more input, at a faster rate can't quite understand what's going on in their surroundings. Okay, to me, this is hardwired stuff. So steady state is great for survival of the species and maintaining the species. Steady state is terrible for changing metabolic milieu.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen, and it's interesting about the walking speed stuff, because I know we see that, there's a significant correlation with walking speed and mortality. Once your walking speed diminishes beyond.
Well, that's functional. Yeah.
Less function, you start to die. And then I talk about the fact that why we're human is because of our gluteal muscles. That's why we can be upright, because we have these relatively large glutes. And so the people that, that lose their gluteal muscles lose their ability to ambulate. But the interesting thing about the, because I've seen, studies looking at, high rep squats and things like that. And the VO2 max production is amazing.
It's off the wall. Yeah.
Incredible amount of cardiorespiratory fitness involved in that stuff. And so you don't have to get on the treadmill and run for an hour, jog for an hour. You can do a couple of sets of squats. I'm interested, because you mentioned you had a protocol which stimulated both muscle growth and VO2 max. I can imagine what it is, but can you more specifically talk about what that was?
Let's say here's a couple of tenets of my system. Okay. Slow resistance training. Why slow? Okay. Because it's most productive. It's most formal. Okay. I mean, my load is now on when I start the set, my muscle's loaded. When I stop the set, due to muscle failure, okay, indicated in a physiological frame, not muscle failure after 7 minutes or 2 seconds, but there's about a 30 to 90, and I'm not a numbers guy, 30 to 90 second range, depending on if it's an isolated movement, if it's a compound movement on your fiber type distribution, all right, stuff like that, okay? So we work major muscle groups, large to small, one set to failure, and as we get more and more fit, we have less and less recovery time between those intervals, okay? So I can get maximum strength gains. I can increase range of motion because we do full range of motion, so I can increase flexibility. We increase VO2 max through the moon, okay? We start to instigate release of free fatty acid, because what happens when you get to this point, Shawnee, anybody, I want to be sexist, but I have a gal who hasn't done a damn thing in years, and I can get her to failure on a wall seat in 30 seconds, 25 seconds. Now she has taxed to failure her type 2B fibers. That's to her. She has now instigated really good stuff happening and cascading of these metabolic events. And she's also, by the way, what happens when you start to build up lactic acid, Shawnee? Respiratory response. We're trying to get rid of CO2, right? So what are we doing? We're enhancing the respiratory response. We're obviously delivering blood because these muscles are trying to energize the activity. Okay, you're getting all of these benefits. So large muscles to small. If I took you in my gym, I would say leg extensions, leg curls, maybe a leg press or a squat if you want to do a compound movement afterwards. But I pre-fatigue the isolated muscle groups so I don't have to use an enormous weight. In other words, I'm pre-fatigued. I'm trying to reduce the mechanical load. So in my opinion, mechanical work goes towards a negative end. Too much mechanical work or a lot of mechanical work or violent mechanical work is, in my mind, counterproductive. Unless you're training to where you have to explode and do, so we're not talking about training. We're talking about metabolic health. We're talking about, function. So mechanical load, I want to be minimized. I want the stress on the muscles, not the joints. And I want the highest metabolic response for that minimal mechanical load. Okay. So those are my two variables. So I said, how do I do that? I work each muscle group to failure, because once I do that, so once I get to that failure externally, internally, that correlates very, very highly with the metabolic threshold that now instigates this cascading of benefits or results from this type of incorporation of muscle work. Okay, so we're manipulating muscle fibers to our advantage. One set to failure, slow repetitions, large to small muscles, 7 to 10 exercises. The same workout I give to my elite. I've got guys that have world records, Olympic gold medals, NBA MVPs, and I got ladies in a wheelchair, and I got guys that come in with a walker. The same principles apply to them that apply to you and me or these other guys, okay? The intensity is what is going to make your body respond, not necessarily the duration, okay? Unless, again, we're trying to train in which duration is part of that which has to be incorporated into that performance. But for metabolic health, get it done, get out of Dodge. And then what's important is that we now have to have recovery. Without recovery, so is 5 times a week better? No. Is 3 times a week better? Not really. And across the board, I've tested all of these things. I've done upper body, lower body, split routines, 5 days a week, 2 days a week, 1 day a week. Every friggin' possibility I keep coming back to. For 99% of the people, twice a week, high intensity, other days, be active. Activity and exercise are two separate and distinct disciplines, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like the concept of intensity, because I see a lot of people doing quote unquote high intensity and there's no intensity there. They sometimes, a lot of times there's a rest period, like a Tabata protocol, where they're,
right.
Their intensity by the time they're on their third rep is nothing. I mean, they're not doing anything.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's a misused term. I mean, if I gave you a shovel and a pick and I said, dig me a 60-foot trench 4 feet deep, you better damn well believe you're going to be sore, you're going to be tired, your muscles are going to ache. That's not high intensity exercise. That's manual labor. There's a difference. And as we, as kind of scientist guys, should have a purer basis than, geez, that was really a tough workout. I used to have guys, these Italian guys, when I first opened my place, come in, these macho, hey, I want you to make me really sore, And I would say to them, hey, come on in my office. I got a baseball bat. I said, I'll make you sore in about maybe 12 seconds. I said, I don't think that's what you're here for, okay? So, you know the whole mindset, what I'm talking about. But this stuff, I'm so lucky that it's great for health. Okay, you asked me about like longevity and stuff. Blair and Ruiz, these are guys I actually did presentations with. 2007, British Medical Journal, 12,000 men. If you are in the top third for your age and gender and muscle strength alone, you could be fat, you could be a smoker, you could be diabetic, but if you're in the top third in muscle strength for your age and gender, you are 40% more likely to live to be 100 and 35% less likely to die of cancer. Big studies. It's in the British Medical Journal, 2007. I'm almost positive, Shawnee. Vini did this meta-analysis, okay, of all these studies on strength, okay? if you are strong, if you do strength, if you're strong and you eat it, what they call a good diet, whatever the hell that is, you live 11 years longer than people who don't. Okay, when they isolate just for exercise, okay, 7 years longer. And we're talking meta-analysis, we're talking hundreds of thousands of subjects. Okay, so there's some real stuff out there that's been demonstrated. So my objective, your objective, I think, is that how do we get people to do this stuff consistently, to do it efficiently, to do it safely for a lifetime? Okay, and that's what I'm about at this point. Do I train athletes? Yeah, but you know, and I know, training elite athletes, they can be a pain in the ass. I mean, there's a lot of Marty cobbling that has to, and I'm too old for that crap. So, but this now, I found this like a rejuvenation. I'm training people online. I don't need to do this, Sean. I've done very well with my with my business ventures and my stuff, but I love to do it. Every workout that I supervise, everybody that I consult is still exciting to me. It's like a puzzle that has different pieces that I'm trying to put together, and I'm using my knowledge and my experience, and these people love it. I mean, what the hell? What could be more rewarding than that? I mean, I'm a lucky guy. People pay me to hear me spout my horse shit. Okay, but I hope it's not horse shit. Okay, I'm trying to really give them the best information I can. I want to help them. I mean, I do want, okay, so I don't know if I'm altruistic or it gives me, feeds my ego or whatever the hell it does, but I like it. Okay, and it seems to work, and I keep studying it. I mean, I'm sure, I talked to Gary Taubes yesterday, and I said, there's a cool book coming out about, it's called First Friends. It's how all these different presidents had like a buddy through all their trials and tribulations. I thought it was a great concept for a book. I said, Gary, if you're interested, he said, I have 300 books that I have to read, 150 of which are brand new sitting on my shelf. He goes, I don't think I'll be able to get to it. But, I don't know about you, but it seems to me like you're up on a lot of studies. You're always wanting to learn about this stuff, okay? You always want to read about it. You want to see what other people say. And sometimes you're trying to protect your own, basis, I guess, a little bit. That's just normal human nature. But you got to be open-minded, okay? That's why I want to tell people about a carnivore diet. I read your book, simply stated. I mean, you can tell you got a great background in this stuff, okay? And I mean, there's nothing, if I go A, B, C, there's really nothing I can say this is wrong. I can't, that what you presented is not wrong. Now, can you have an opinion about how right it is? Okay, I got that. That's fair. Okay, just like Teddy Naaman stuff. When I first saw Teddy Naaman, I'll be honest with you, and I like him now a lot. And I saw this picture of this guy. He kept showing him doing one-handed push-ups. And I said, this is bullshit. This is like a guy that comes into the gym that, is a wannabe little bodybuilder or athlete. And I said, why is he showing these pictures? I mean, what is this? How relevant is a one-handed push-up or a pistol squat to 90% of the people that you treat? So I got a little pissed off and I made a little bit of fun of him. But if you read his book and if you understand what he's saying, there's not one thing I can dispute that doesn't make rational sense. Even to the application of, I think, for example, Sean, protein, right? I have had people on high protein diets since the 70s with really low carbs. I sent people in the 70s to the pharmacy to get keto sticks, and the pharmacist didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I said, I just want to see if these people are burning, more fat because they want to burn fat. It's a way to figure it out. No, I mean, it's simple test. So we're talking 50 years almost that I've been doing this, and I eat, not to, do as I say, not as I do or something, but I mean, I've been eating 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds of meat for almost 50 years, Sean. Now, do I have salad? I'm Italian. I love vegetables, okay? I like my broccoli, my cauliflower, little Parmesan cheese, little olive oil and garlic. I have Cobb salads that are the size of a brontosaurus's head. I mean, I use these huge Cobb salads. I love that stuff, okay? But I still eat, like I went to the butcher yesterday, and I picked up about $300 worth of New York strips and ribeyes. And the guy says, man, look at you. He calls me Jack LaLanne. He says, look at you. Did you eat that big ribeye? I had a cowboy ribeye, like the friggin' thing was about 4 inches high. And I pretty much knocked it off, But okay, so it works for me. It works for most of the people that I work with. And so I want to know more about punching holes in the carnivore diet, because I want to punch a hole in any system that I use, so I have a good response and I have a good rationale for why I'm doing it. And I really haven't seen it. I mean, I haven't seen any way to punch a hole in this thing. What are we lacking? You have addressed that. What are you lacking with a carnivore diet? I don't friggin' know, Sean. I mean, can it be easily supplemented if it has to be? Yeah. I mean, so what's the harm? Okay. And if we see all these benefits, how can we not say this has value? Okay. And I know, I mean, I've had people that are vegans and stuff like that. I got a vegan guy that I trained, Shawnee, he would knock your socks off. He's 27. He's vegan, nicest guy in the world, phenomenal physique, no drugs. I mean, the kid doesn't do any, I don't even think he eats cooked vegetables. Anyway, but, and I had with Brian Lenskis and I, we did all kinds of tests on this kid. We put a continuous glucose monitor on him. Now, apparently whatever he's doing is working for him. God bless him. But he teaches low carb. He's one of my coaches. He teaches low carb eating. Okay. So you have to be open-minded a little bit, but for most people, they can't, behaviorally, they can't handle carbohydrates. And what's a better way to not handle carbohydrates than to eat something that has no friggin' carbohydrates? I don't see how that's hard to ingest, mentally.
Yeah, I mean, I try not to be particularly dogmatic about this. I say this is an option, and I think meat is something that clearly humans have eaten forever. I mean, it's clearly what it's part of what our species eats, and I think that this recent sort of push to demonize it or to eliminate it from the diet is complete insanity. And we've got people out there talking about nutritional misinformation because you're telling people to eat meat, and that's kind of scary times. You think about it. If you think of that, that's going to be, we're just
so out there, Sean, though, a little to me. I mean, it's sad because people really want to know, where do I go for good information? And that's not an easy question. Where do I go? They go to you, they go to me. I mean, that's a little self-serving, right? But it's not an easy question to answer, because you would think that the places where you would go to get good information, like your doctor or the government or things like that, would be solid. Unfortunately, we know they just aren't solid. I mean, it's bullshit. Bullshit meaning it's not good science, it's not good behavior, and the obvious results are catastrophic. I mean, so, this becomes, when it becomes religion, Sean, I don't want to have any part of it. I mean, it's just irrational. It's bullshit. It's a waste of my time. And if I'm dealing with people, I'm going to try to be straight shooter, tell them what I know, what I've seen, and try to also be a little bit, as I get older, maybe I'm a little less, dogmatic, and I'm saying, okay, if it works, listen, if it works for you, you're healthy, your labs are good, okay, fine. There may be a caveat, this may not last forever, but what am I going to say? I say, well, worry about something else, get a job, I don't know, do something else. Why are you coming to me to ask me information if, number one, you don't want to hear what I have to say, and number two, you're perfectly happy with your status? I have had almost no patients come to me or clients that were perfectly happy with their status, because why the hell would they come to me? Just go on doing what you're doing.
Exactly. I want to just from your perspective, because I mean, 20 years younger than me, so you would have grown up in the 1950s, basically.
Yep.
How did things look back then compared to today? I mean, Eisenhower has his heart attack, and then suddenly the nation goes on a low-fat diet. What was it like in the 50s versus, well, now, I guess? I mean, compared to what we saw.
I think, Sean, like I was, I wasn't, and this is a joke, everybody, I was raised in New York City, but I lived in Staten Island, which is one of the boroughs. When I was brought up in Staten Island, we had farms all around us. There were no buildings and high stuff. So, we were like that. I was from an Italian family. So we ate from the Italian farmers around us, produce that they had. We always said, my mother was very well educated, and father, these guys, they had advanced degrees, were pretty educated people. So my mother would go by that, you got to have a yellow vegetable, a green vegetable, you got to have protein, you got to have starch, that was what was out there from the government. Okay, so that's how I was brought up. But our traditional stuff was a lot of meat, a lot of fish, some vegetables, and on holidays you'd have some dessert. I never had, as a kid, I'm not saying I was Abe Lincoln or anything, but we didn't have dessert during the week. Sunday maybe you have a little dessert. Okay, fine. So we ate good stuff, good stuff. And there weren't, I mean, if there was a fat kid in your class, Sean, it was like, oh, look at the fat kid, because he was an anomaly, right? I mean, I remember, this is an interesting, you'd get a kick out of this, but there was a fence we used to crawl through to get to some place we weren't supposed to go as kids, right? And so the only guys who couldn't get through that fence was this kid, Raymond. I won't say his last name. He was fat. And I couldn't fit through because my chest, even as a kid, and I would be so pissed off because me and the fat kid could not get through the fence. But he was the only guy that was heavy, okay? I mean, it wasn't a thing. And so now I really feel if I go to an airport or I go in any public place, a supermarket, it's like, I can't, my wife says, don't take it. So, but it's like, I said, holy shit. All I see is a sick person instead of, a sick person and his sick mother and his sick younger sister. I mean, to me, this is the manifestation of metabolic disease. And it gets to me. It's like, God, we got to do something. This is crazy.
Yeah. Likewise, I remember being I can't remember, I guess I was born in 67. So whenever Jenner won the Olympics, I think it was in 76, I was a 9-year-old kid.
Yeah.
I was inspired to organize a neighborhood Olympics around our neighborhood. We had a mattress we used for a high jump, and we threw some rocks, and we ran around the block for the marathon. And it was me and 4 other kids, and there was the fat kid in the neighborhood. There was one fat kid, and I remember his name was Steve Smith. I'm sure I'm not, there's a lot of Steve Smiths in the world, so I mean, there's probably a lot of fat ones too. But I mean, it was literally the fat kid, and you had that. Now where's the thin kid? I mean, it's gotten insane. We see this with the obesity in the children. It is something that is painful. It breaks your heart to see these little kids.
Absolutely.
That, I mean, they never know a day of health in their life. They don't know what their body's capable of. They don't know what it even feels like. Like you made this point that what does it feel like to be strong and vigorous and athletic? You don't know it unless you've experienced it. And then when you lose it, and I know, like last year I did a little experiment where I got really skinny. I lost a lot of weight. Some of it was intentional, but I mean, I literally did not feel right. It was just like psychologically messed me up. It was just like, I feel weak and anxious. I can't deal with this. I got to get back to having a.
Well, you become used to this stuff, man. This is, it's kind of, addictive in a good way, Yeah. But again, for the general public that aren't elite or don't even want to be elite or have any aspirations, you can do a great service to yourself and your family by incorporating some of this exercise. And again, I'm asking you, people, 3 reasons they don't exercise. I don't have the time. I'm going to get hurt. It doesn't work. If you don't have 15 minutes twice a week, check your insurance policies. No one's gotten hurt training slow. Now I've had Navy SEALs, world-class guys on the ground in 4 minutes. And the only thing that was hurt was their feelings, but they never got physically hurt. Okay. And it works. Within 3 or 4 workouts, you see and feel a difference. And I tell people the only gimmick I have is that I don't have a gimmick. Okay. This is for real. And I think it's the same thing with the diet, Shawnee. Well, this sounds like a gimmick. How can you eliminate every goddamn thing and eat that and eat only that and be healthy? That's a gimmick. No, it's not a gimmick. That's the point is it's not a gimmick. It has some science, and it has now how many thousands of people doing this thing and doing things very much like it, millions. Okay. And look at the results. I mean, come on, who's trying to fool somebody? I don't. And again, I can see why people are skeptical because there's so much bullshit. Every 6 months, there's a new project, there's a new plan, there's a new diet, there's a new exercise. I tell people, why, if this thing was so great, wouldn't it sustain itself? Why must there be a new option every 6 months? I said, people have been doing my system, some almost 50 years, hundreds, thousands, over 20, 25 years. To me, that's very gratifying because it works. It cuts across all the different lines of population. It's something worthwhile. If you don't do something like this, or it's my thing, do something similar. Okay, I don't care, but come on, it's worth a shot, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ben, unfortunately, I've got to go in just a couple of minutes, but I want to give you an opportunity. I'd love to get you back and continue this because I think there's a lot more stuff we can get into. But you've got a book. Tell us what the book is, where they can get it, where people that want to hook up with you can go. Social media.
15 Minutes to Fitness. It's on Amazon. I wrote it for the general population. I took a lot of science out of it. And it tells you what you can eat, how many carbs are in, like 600-700 foods and portions. And it describes exactly what the workout is, a little bit of the philosophy, a little bit of the not too deep in the weeds science. And it's just, again, it's a book that I wrote. I don't make a bunch of money on books. I don't know if you know that, but I'd like people to, if they're interested, I think it's a good read. I think it's a nice reference book. And they can always reach me, Dr. Ben Bo, DRBENBO. I think that there's a website, and I don't even know about it. I don't even see my own website, but there's a website, and I've got cute story. I've got a couple thousand followers. I didn't even know what Twitter was till about 8 months ago, and somebody showed me what it said. So I wrote a thing. I said on Twitter, I said, I don't really do much tweeting, but thanks for following me anyway. So that's how old I am, Sean.
Yeah, well, I tell you, some days I wish I would not have known about this.
Yeah, I hear you.
It's kind of, it's kind of one of those things where once you're in, you're in. But anyway, well, Ben, it's a pleasure. Tell Doug I'd be happy to talk at some point. I like Doug. I had some good conversation with him. But as you know, the last year, the world has been crazy, and it's tough to kind of get out and do stuff. So hopefully we're getting back to some level of normalcy soon.
All right, kid. Well, listen, keep doing what you're doing, and don't take it to heart. Don't let the idiots get to you, Sean.
No, I don't. I find them entertaining. They inspire me to continue doing what I'm doing, and I use them as kind of a humorous type thing. But, all right, guys. We'll see you guys tomorrow. We got another guest on tomorrow. And take care, everybody. Bye bye. Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it. Bye bye.